Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the regular Board of Trustees meeting for Tuesday, May 24th, 2022. Will you please stand and join me in the pledge? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Kosbeck.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Grace.
Here.
Trustee Hardy.
Here.
Trustee Sorcelli.
Here.
Trustee Stevens.
Here.
Trustee Ayers.
Here.
Trustee Murphy.
Here.
Excellent. We have a full board. Before we move on to public participation here, I'd like to, if we could honor a brief moment of silence for, there was 14 and now looks like there's 18 dead from a shooting, 18 children dead from a shooting in a elementary school in Uvalde, Texas. So if we could please honor a moment of silence, we appreciate it. Thank you. Makes you appreciate what we have here. All right, next on our agenda is public participation. And this is for anything that is not on tonight's agenda that citizens would like to address. And we have some sign-ups here. First is Lauren Roth. Lauren? I always forget to say this, but if you could state your name and address for the record, even though you haven't signed up here, and if we keep the comments at 3 minutes or less. Thank you.
My name is Lauren Roth. I live at 1735 Exeter Street. I serve on the Port Committee, so I do appreciate all of your time and commitment to the town. The reason I'm here, as you probably imagine, is the Richardson Bike Park, which has been talked about at the last 2 meetings. Unfortunately, I was out of town, so I wasn't able to attend. The main concern from our neighborhood, has been already spoken about: parking, traffic, crime, access from a neighborhood road that isn't really set up for that kind of thing. Wildlife, all of these things have been brought up already. While the idea of the bike park has been in the master plan for 4 years, the final design was really not brought up until September's Port Committee meeting, at which point I didn't realize in that whole 4 years, if you look at the master plan, which I have here, the access from Meadowlark is clearly marked as maintenance and emergency access. And now, whether that was the intention or not, that's what's marked on the master plan that's available online. So this was the working assumption that we were under, was that this was maintenance and emergency, not public access. There's a small parking lot on the plan, which on this one is not even marked. And I assumed that was a maintenance parking lot to go with the maintenance entrance. Places like Valmont Bike Park, which I understand are a much bigger bike park, but really, to be quite honest, it's 42 acres, and this park is estimated around 30 acres. Valmont Bike Park in the summertime gets around 500 people a day. So we're putting a parking lot for 20 vehicles, and then everything else will push out onto Meadowlark and down into my neighborhood. I'm not against the bike park. I think the bike park is a great idea. I think that it should be an integral part of Richardson Park as a whole. And I think that having a main parking area and a main bathroom facility is a way to alleviate the parking issues that we're talking about, to alleviate the traffic on Meadowlark, which is already increased with the West Side Crossing development that's approved and will start being developed. It will eliminate, or at least somewhat eliminate, crime from that. And what I mean by that is not that there won't be crime, obviously everywhere there's crime, but having access from that area brings people into our neighborhood that might not otherwise be there. Right now the town of Loveland has actually just passed an ordinance to outlaw overnight camping, and they're in the process of clearing out Railroad Park, King's Crossing, all of these places that are homeless encampments. We don't have those ordinances, and I know I'm under the impression that the town is working on that, and that's a great thing. But again, you run into issues with that kind of a thing in any area where you're bringing the public into a neighborhood. The other side of the road from us is all county, so it's Larimer County. You heard from a couple of those residents as well at the April 26th meeting. You know, that side of the road isn't, there's no improvements, there's no curb, there's no sidewalk, there's no markings, there's no parking area, there's nothing, it's just their property. And, you know, whether that can be an easement or not, really, I mean, honestly, you're gonna get people pulling up on their property along that line. We've talked with the board, we've talked with Chris Kirk and Will Karsbeck we met with today, and Jeremy Olinger and Keith Knoll. You know, one of the alternatives, like I said, that we thought about was a north entrance. That would alleviate what the sheriff's office was concerned about in terms of crime. It would be a much more visible area to have a parking lot. It would be something that would only create one area for them to patrol, which they would already probably be patrolling because it's a much more popular area to be. It's where people are gonna come in. There were comments made at the last meeting that because cyclists are health conscious, that there shouldn't be a concern for crime or drug use in the park. And I want to be quite honest, like, I get that. They're health conscious. They're, for the most part, they're health conscious people. I exercise with my kids all the time. Those aren't the folks that I'm necessarily worried about. It's what happens after dark. It's what happens when those lights go off. And, you know, with my property backing up to that, I'm going to be very vigilant. And that's unfortunate to have to be vigilant of what's going on right behind my house.
I hate to interrupt, but we've
Nope,
hit the
I'm
3
good.
minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Okay, next, Blake Blewett. Blewett.
Lakewood, 1733 Exeter Street. More on the Richardson Bike Park. I know you're probably tired of hearing stuff, but look, I am absolutely for the park. I just would like to see a few things changed. Really, and I think part of it is the notification process. You know, we really kind of knew about it in 21 with the access on North Meadowlark. And really that's where I think we've got some heartburn. I understand it's been in there, but from what we're seeing, you know, we only saw that in 21. That's why we're being vocal now. So it's taken us a little bit of time. You know, and I just don't think this is a get it done deal, at least from my perspective. I think this thing could be worked through. I'm happy to work through any of this stuff. I just don't want access on North Meadowlark is kind of what I'm after. You know, the other thing is I feel like some of the concerns LCSO Anderson brought up weren't addressed. So he brought up a lot of things and it just doesn't look like those have been addressed, at least to me. So what I would like to see is the plan flipped basically from north to south, access on the north side. That doesn't impact any residents. Essentially, there's no one up on that north end of the park. I understand that will delay the park, and I get that. I know people are excited for it, and I really don't want to hold it up, but if it were to flip, the access was to be up to the north, then we wouldn't have any issues down with Matthews Farm or Meadowlark. Obviously, I think you need to have emergency access and you know, maintenance access in the north of Meadowlark, and I'm fine with that. That's you know, that's expected for a place like that to have access. But I would like to see this rolled into the main park plan, and maybe this to be part of phase 1 of the main park plan instead of its own thing. Just get it done. I don't want to be Nike here, you know, just get it done. Just get it done. You know, and I'll tell you informally, we've talked with Lauren and I have talked with a lot of people in Meadowlark, or excuse me, in Matthews Farm. I don't have anybody that I've talked to that's for access at the end of Meadowlark. I haven't spoken with everyone, but from what I'm seeing, that's where we are, unfortunately. And really, I just don't think there's any really reason to rush it. I understand people are excited, but I think this thing could be super duper good. And I think if we flip this plan, move it up to the north, put the access on the north side, it alleviates all the problems on the southern side on Meadowlark with our neighborhood and Matthews Farm. And then also, we don't get the double whammy with the development on the southern end of Meadowlark right there at 56. So, but anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next, Brian Lack.
Brian Lack, 706 7th Street, the corner lot with no trees. We're working on it. I've got a few questions here. I'm curious when the pedestrian crosswalk things go up on Main Street. I forget what time of year that was, but be neat maybe before the next weekend, if it's possible. And then I'm also curious, I've noticed some of the potholes are being repaired. And I've been treating the little weeds that grow up in the curb. Is the town going by with weed killer in the gutters to, I remember they used to, I'm just curious if that program is still going, if that's part of the maintenance. And then I guess I'll keep it short. The final question I've got, has there been any progress on the old town hall? Has the builder come back with anything? And I know a lot of work went into that. I'm just curious if I could get a quick update on these questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go through this and then we'll have Administrator Kirk respond to all these points. Next, Carolyn Hobson.
Carolyn Hobson, 817 Greenwood Drive. I am also on the Port Committee. I'm here to speak about the bike park. I would like to vote in favor of it. We do drive to Vermont and Fort Collins to go to such amenity, so we would love to have it locally. I think it'd be a great regional draw, bring people to town that might not normally visit town. I do understand the concerns as far as the access road. I feel like anytime, unfortunately, if you live in northern Colorado and you back up to open space, it will be something at some point. And I think a bike park, while yes, it might get busy on the weekends and certain times of the year, generally it's not going to be constant use all the time. There are certainly a lot of other things that could be behind there that would have a lot more impact on the neighborhood. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you very much. That includes those that have signed up. Is there anyone that wishes to speak that did not have a chance to sign up? All right, Administrator Kirk, I guess we could start off with the bike park. This will be coming back to us, is it the 14th?
Plan is to bring it back to you on the 14th.
Okay, so those in favor or opposed, this will be a public process, of course, and be an agenda item on the 14th. And not only welcome, but encourage you to show up and hopefully come to some kind of resolution on that. For Mr. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, we've created an alternative to the original plan. I don't think it addresses all the concerns the neighbors have. We met with them this afternoon, heard their concerns. And we'll also have information about what it might look like if we flip things to the north end.
Thanks. For Mr. Lack's questions, pedestrian crosswalk to Bollards.
Honestly, don't know. I'll have to get with our public works crew and find out. This is the time of the year when they typically go out, so usually before Memorial Day. But
Last year they put them out after Bertha Day to get the parade through.
that's part of it. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for reminding me of that. That's that is why they got delayed last year.
Okay, after birthday day then. Weed killer, I don't know if we use weed killer.
We used to go around and spray in the gutters, curbs and gutters. That caused a lot of turmoil, and so I don't think that we've been doing that the last few years. If we have been, I'm not aware of it, and I always find out when we do because I get phone calls. So, but that's another one. I don't think our public works crews are planning to do that this year, but I can confirm with them as well.
Finally, progress on the Old Town Hall site, 3rd Street.
That's coming back to you on the 14th as well. The developer that submitted a proposal for the redevelopment of Old Town Hall. We've been going back and forth with them on their alternatives they put together based on their original plan that they submitted to you that you guys liked but had some ideas about how it could be done differently. They've done some more comprehensive site analysis to really figure out what can fit there. How you deal with everything from deliveries to trash to, residential commercial interface, all that good stuff. And they'll have some site plans and elevation drawings to show you on the 14th to get your feedback on.
Thank you, great. Finally, we had Sergeant Anderson. If we could have you come to the front and introduce, I believe it's a new lieutenant we have.
Good evening, Town Board. Every man has a boss. I married mine. God didn't think she could handle me, so he blessed the sheriff to say, I need another boss. Well, Troy Badberg is my lieutenant. Most of you know him. He's been with me for a while, but this is more for the newer people that are on the board. I wanted you to see him and ask him any questions. I'll walk out if you need me to.
Or we can escort him out, one of the two.
See what I mean? So, anyway, Troy Badberg.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions? Thanks for coming down.
Awesome, thank you.
Appreciate it. And thank you for everyone who spoke. I know that's not easy. I had to do that recently myself, and I got spaghetti legs, so I know it takes a lot to come up here and speak, and we all appreciate it. Okay, if no one else wishes to speak, we'll move on to the regular meeting tonight. And we'll start off with the consent agenda. Would trustees like anything removed from the consent agenda? Otherwise, is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to combine and approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
All right, trustee Stevens has moved on this. Trustee Hardy has seconded. Any final discussion on that? Hearing none, clerk, may roll call vote, please?
Trustee Gray,
Yes.
trustee Hardy,
Yes.
trustee Ayers,
Yes.
trustee Murphy,
Yes.
trustee Soreselli,
Yes.
trustee Stevens,
Yes,
Mayor Karspeck.
Yes. Okay, consent agenda is approved. We'll move on to our second item tonight, and that is the Regional Transportation Study. This is a presentation, and we have Kelly tonight. Kelly Ledbetter? Great.
Kelly will be joining us remotely. I'm gonna ask Brian DuBois, my assistant to the town administrator, to come up, and he'll just introduce the item briefly and turn it over to Kelly. Kelly is joining us via Zoom tonight. She couldn't be here in person.
Good evening, everybody, and I'm glad Mayor Karspeck's publicly announced that it's not easy speaking in front of everyone, so. For those of you that have not worked with me yet or met me, my name is Brian DuBois, and I'm the assistant to the town administrator. The town is currently engaged in a transit assessment with Felsberg, Holt, and Ulevig, also known as FHU for easier term, where we have been working at 10,000 feet and are currently going to 5,000 feet with the next steps. Chris and I have been working as town staff representatives along with Kelly Ledbetter and the FHU team, Mayor Karspeck, trustees Grace and Hardy, and various stakeholders to see what Berthoud's transit looks like in the near and distant future locally and regionally. As the town grows, the assessment will ensure residents, employees, commuters, and visitors have access to thoughtfully planned and connected transit around town and across northern Colorado. So with that, we would like to share what we have been working on so far, and as Chris said, Kelly is not able to make it here in person, but I'll turn this over to her virtually so she can go more in depth about the assessment and the next steps. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thanks Brian, and good evening everyone. Really was hopeful to be with you all tonight, but COVID is still around. So in the interest of keeping everybody safe, I just am presenting from home, but I appreciate just your patience and willingness to listen to me as I present virtually. If you can't hear me or at any time can't see my screen, please just let me know and I'll adjust as I need to. So yeah, thanks again for just giving us the opportunity to provide an update. Mayor Karspeck and Trustee Grace have been involved in some of our progress meetings to date, but at this point we thought it would be appropriate and to give an update to the full board. So thank you, Mayor and Trustee Grace, for being involved as you have to date. I will also note that in your December packet, we provided information including the existing conditions report, which was one of the early phases of this process. And so we will not be covering any of that information tonight. So if you need it, I'd recommend going back to that packet. So kind of jumping right in to where we left off tonight. So tonight we've got about a 15 to 20 minute presentation. We're going to cover what we've heard through the community engagement to date, talk about some of the key findings of the operational finance and governance assessment that we completed, present the vision and goals, which is kind of the overall planning framework that is guiding the evaluation and decision making through this process, discuss those needs and opportunities that were identified, and then give you an update on where we are with the service scenario development and findings. So that's where we'll where we'll go through this evening. And I'll say that we are kind of in the throes right now of the service scenario development, and we'll be coming back to you at a future meeting soon to present then the findings for that. So as Brian said, we're really looking towards the future of transit in the community and thinking about 5 to 10 years out, thinking where is the community headed, and what would the community like transit to look like in the future. This is longer term, but will have implications for the more immediate as we look to build towards that envision future transit service. So we completed outreach in November and December. Was a real concerted effort and push to be involved. Our project team was at the grand opening of the rec center and had information available there. And then we had about a 6-week period of online engagement as well, where people could receive the same information about just what the current status of transit is to date, and also what the intent of this project was. Our real focus was just to introduce the project, educate the community, and then gain an understanding of what people would like to see in the future. I'd say one of the key takeaways for us is that many people just were unaware that Berthoud even had a transit service, both in town and multiple connections to regional services like Transport Service. However, despite not knowing, over 90% of the respondents, both in person and then through the online engagement, indicated that they would be open to using transit for some of their trips. I would say too that the biggest interest and kind of topic for people was where the transit was connecting to. They had less interest on how it was being connected, what type of transit that was, but certainly where it was going was top of mind. People also recognized that there needed to be a balance between those that are in the community that are transit dependent and fully reliant on a service like this, and then those commuters and others who may have other means to get to and from their destinations and would be using this to supplement kind of their daily trips that they take. We included a full summary of survey results and information that we received, how we went about getting information in this packet as well. So for the board members and for those who can access online, all of that information is provided on there. We still have the website up with information, so at any point people can still go and see the information and use that as a starting point. One thing I will say, and kind of one of the key takeaways for our project team, because of the lack of knowledge of just of BAT service, of RAFT in the community, I think for us the takeaway is that the future of transit in town will really need to be supported by continued public engagement, continued public education, and really robust marketing, so that people not only are aware, but it can start to weave that into their daily lives. We also completed an operational finance and governance assessment of both the current BAT service and the current RAF service, which is provided for the entirety of the fire protection district. This was also included as an attachment in your packet, but I would say that some of the key findings are that, all of the fleet currently for both BATs and RAFs is in a state of good repair. So they all have some useful life left. Those are some jargon terms that we use in the transit world, but it's basically saying that the vehicles are in good shape. There's no immediate asset needs related to the vehicles. We'd also noted from evaluating all of the operational and trip information that the vast majority of trips being taken by riders of the BAT system were between the town going to and from Loveland. That's that green arrow that you can see just on that screenshot on the right. And the vast majority of trips that are being taken from the fire protection district and provided by RAFT are going between those areas outside of town and to Longmont. So in some ways they're providing a means of transportation for very different needs that are currently happening. And lastly, I would just note, as it comes to ridership, is that ridership is still down about 33% from pre-pandemic 2019 levels. So there's still some work to do to really get back to where the services were in 2019. One of the, big takeaways for us in doing this assessment is that any new transit service will take time to build up and to, become part of the community. And that may take that 5 to 10 year kind of planning horizon that we've set out as a part of this process and assessment to guide this overall process. I'd also say too, it kind of related to that takeaway is that any kind of new service or change in the way in which service is delivered should be as flexible as possible and as nimble as possible, so that it can respond to changing conditions, whether those changing conditions are a pandemic, whether those changing conditions are, more people working from home as something we've retained from the pandemic, or those changing conditions are just more development and more residents in the community. So that would be certainly one of our key takeaways there. So using the information from the existing conditions, the outreach completed to date, the operational kind of finance and governance, which is a really kind of detailed and nitty gritty of both BATS and RAFs, we developed this overall guiding vision statement. And we wanted to do so before we jumped into any evaluation of potential service scenarios and potential solutions for the future, because we wanted to be clear on what we were trying to achieve. This is still at the planning level. And so I'm not going to read it to you here, but I think you can see it on the screen. But this overall guiding vision and the goals, which I'll show you here on the next slide, kind of serve as that North Star for this assessment, and guide the overall evaluation and decision making. And so this is certainly one item we can come back to and discuss if you'd like. So there's that. And then here are the 7 goal areas that we thought would be really important to articulate, because what we're trying to go towards and work towards and identify a solution for is a transit service that is more accessible, more connected, that it's adaptable, that it's efficient, integrated, intentional, and reliable. And again, these are really just kind of the pithy ways that we are summarizing what we've heard to date through outreach that was completed in the fall and outreach, that was completed previously related to the comprehensive plan, input from stakeholders that we've been engaging with that have kind of a regional perspective and a local perspective, and then also industry best practices. Certainly, these are just some of the key kind of metrics by which you can tell if a transit service is successful is by how efficient it is, by how reliable it is. So again, I won't read those out to you, but this is kind of the overall framework that we've been using to guide our evaluation to date. Lastly, out of that, we wanted to identify and really clearly summarize what are the kind of main needs and what are the main opportunities. So supporting the town's vision for the future. We are right on the heels of the comprehensive plan, and there's a very clear and articulate direction built into that we want to support and be complementary to. There's an existing pool of riders who, many of which are transit dependent, that both BATS and RAFT have a role in meeting their daily transportation needs. And so serving those existing riders is paramount. That still has to be maintained. There's a desire to do that, a need to do that, and an opportunity to do that maybe more efficiently and do that well. And then there's an opportunity to enhance and expand what's already there. And there's also an opportunity to provide regional connectivity. So these were kind of the 4 pillars that we've arrived at and really used for the basis of this evaluation that I'll kind of jump into here. So we started off with a full range of options. I mean, from the most robust, I guess we didn't put like heavy passenger rail on there, but certainly kind of cast a very wide net to say, hey, these are service models and ways in which service can be delivered to communities. Which of these do we feel like even has applicability? So we cast that full range of options. We've got a whole matrix here that I believe was included as well in the packet of the evaluation criteria, but here you can just see the columns for the cost and the feasibility, and that specific kind of the feasibility to Berthoud. And out of this, we identified 3 service models to retain for further evaluation. This is the point-to-point on-demand service, the microtransit, and then the commuter service to and from the regional mobility hub that's coming online. And so you might say, well, what's point-to-point on-demand? What's microtransit? And I'll just summarize by saying point-to-point kind of on-demand service is what you see today that BATS has. It's a service where riders request a ride and they're picked up at their origin and dropped off at their destination, typically in a defined service area. And it's similar to a taxi service. Point-to-point on-demand service can take shape through kind of those smaller buses like BATS have, smaller vans, and Uber and Lyft, that type of ride-hailing service is also a type of point-to-point on-demand service. Under the current BATS model, when you request a ride, it's typically the day before, so it has to be about 24 hours out. But we've seen that in newer service models and certainly leveraging new technology, you can make that such that people could request a ride within about 15 minutes. So there's even ways within kind of the current system, which we'll talk about a little bit of to gain efficiencies. Microtransit is probably the term that's most confusing. Like, this isn't just small transit vehicles that we're pushing around, but this is a form of on-demand service, but it really utilizes smart phone technology and kind of a back-end algorithms to match trip requests to dynamic and flexible routing within a defined service areas. So what this means is that sometimes the bus or the vehicle or the car, the small shuttle vans, maybe be taking you directly from your origin to your destination. It may mean too, on a busier Saturday morning, or when there's an event going on or something else, that you may be picked up. You may pick up someone else, deviate slightly, and then get dropped off because it's on the back end calculating kind of the real-time needs and identifying a solution in real time to meet that. So it's very dynamic, it's very flexible. Microtransit has certainly matured as a public transportation option within the last 5 years, and typically, again, is very nimble and operates with the smaller vehicles, such as smaller cars or vans or shuttle buses. And then lastly, the commuter service, I think that's pretty straightforward. I think what you could think of that as kind of a dedicated service that we could envision going out Mountain Avenue and connecting there to the mobility hub at I-25 and State Highway 56, but doing so such that the timing is coordinated with the busting and their availability for the regional trips right at that location. This can be offered through both the point-to-point on-demand and also the microtransit models. So you can think of it as almost like a temporal overlay, where during certain times of the day, maybe that peak hour or 2 in the morning and the peak hour or 2 in the evening, when there is that higher commuter demand, is when you could see that being kind of the overall priority then for the transit service. So we felt like those were the 3 that merited more evaluation, being retained and then evaluating more. So that's kind of where we are today. We've developed 3 kind of targets, 3 scenarios, I would say. The first of which is focusing on optimizing the status quo. This is recognizing that there are new technologies and other ways to market, and essentially focused on improving the experience for those current riders of the BATS and RAFT systems. The second of which seeks to enhance and expand local service. So this is where we really would open up to the possibility of contracting for that service to be delivered, evaluating where those efficiencies can be gained either in-house or externally with some sort of like turnkey contracted service, with the intent of still retaining those existing riders, but also increasing the overall kind of capacity within the transit system to attract new local riders. And then last of which is essentially how we were talking about the building on of the regional connections, where we would be doing this, building upon 1 and 2, so really building upon 2, and integrating better with the regional service. So really thinking about the connections to CDOT's busting service and to Transport's flex route that comes through town. I'm not going to go through the details, but I wanted to include these slides just so you have them here. Scenario 1, I would say, is probably the most conservative. Like, hey, we want to focus on those riders that we have today, and we want to get back to the pre-pandemic levels. That's kind of the baseline built into scenario 1. Scenario 2, as I said, is kind of an increase in that it would be provided through an on-demand or the microtransit service model, with a little more of an ambitious target, more than even returning to the 2019 levels. Certainly, I think with some of the efficiencies that would be gained, particularly through the microtransit services, I think that's a very realistic target for the community, even with its size as it is now. And then scenario 3 would essentially tack on additional trips specific to those commuters and making those connections once the mobility hub comes online. So again, we are kind of landing here, but wanted to present and give you an update before we continued, and also kind of get your feedback, see if there's anything that you have heard as a board or as a community that we also need to be considering when we think about the details of these different service scenarios. Certainly the service delivery model is something that we're currently researching. And, what does that mean for eligibility? What is the cost, both, the cost to operate that and the cost of fares? Is there a cost for fares? So those are some of the details that we are working on now and anticipate coming back and presenting the more refined kind of nuances of all of those options. So that's where we're headed. So yes, like I said, we'll be advancing and identifying what we think is the recommended and most feasible scenario for the future, including the policy level kind of support and decision making that would need to be in place to support that, and including the timing and potential phasing as well. Re-engage with the community, and we recently engaged with stakeholders, but I would anticipate that we would engage with them as well, and then develop clear plans for implementation. So that kind of wraps up the formal presentation. But if there's any further discussion needed on any of this or feedback, would certainly welcome that and like to hear your thoughts.
Oh, fantastic, thank you, Kelly. Trustees, any questions, comments?
I have one question.
Trustee Stevens.
How would you integrate like with Flex, since it looks like there's probably some overlap between what looks to be proposed and Flex? How, since they're different governmental entities, how's that going to work?
Yeah, so I guess our initial thought would be to coordinate schedules with Flex. So, Flex has a deviation and a stop downtown right now as it connects to Longmont and to up to Fort Collins. And so really it would be a further integration with their scheduling and platform to ensure that any riders of, say, an on-demand or a microtransit system would be picked up and dropped off at the Flex station prior to the bus coming, to ensure that they could make that connection.
How funding, since it's different entities, how does the funding work on something like that, or is it just based on what their schedule is?
I see. Yeah, so you're right. It is funded differently. And I know for the Northern Colorado through the North Front Range MPO, they are currently working on, I think they're calling it a one call, one click, and better integrating those systems. So we'd have to look into the details about how someone could, using the smartphone technology, certainly be able to pay for their trip, should there be a fee for the service within town. But my hope, and I know it's possible, to further integrate so that you can have those those fares available and pay right there on your phone. So there would need to be some coordination, certainly for that. The North Front Range MPO does sit on our stakeholder group, so we could talk with Corey and see if he has any guidance on how to integrate it from a user perspective and beyond just the scheduling.
All right, that's all I had. Thanks, Kelly, and thanks
Okay, yeah,
for what you're
thanks for
doing
the-
here. Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome.
Any questions?
I just have one.
Go ahead, May.
Thank you. I was just curious how the RAFT organization and VATS have been involved in the conversations, and if there's any feedback that you're receiving from them that we need to know about as far as how they feel that the integration will work and that type of thing.
Yeah, thanks for that question. RAFT has been significantly involved. Probably even, I would say, in a really needed way. We've coordinated quite a bit with Roof to understand kind of what they've been doing, how their ridership has changed over the years. So they were, at least when it comes to that operational finance and governance assessment, they were an equal partner in that, and have been involved to date quite a bit. We even have I guess we're calling it a steering committee, which is our meetings that are even kind of a breakout group of the stakeholder group where we meet with them individually and talk through things prior to going to the larger stakeholder group. So
It's wonderful. Thank you.
yeah, so these service scenarios, certainly when we're looking at the different models, and even just service areas, for example, considering service for 13 square miles or so, which is currently the town limits, versus the fire protection area, which is what they serve, which is like 70 some square miles, becomes very different. But there is something that you may see in the future, and it's just a term kind of being used in the industry called commingling. And it's just a term that they've associated to service models that are very specific to this, where you have one that does more of the transit dependent and only transportation to more of the dispersed rural areas, and you're integrating it with those that are a little more suburban or urban in nature, because certainly to achieve, I would say, the overall service times that you would like in a really efficient system, doing so over 70 square miles becomes really inefficient very quickly. But there are ways that you can utilize the technology and build in the kind of algorithms on the back end for it to understand whether it's an in-town or out of town trip. So we've been having some discussions as a project team with some of those technology providers to understand how they're even doing that. So what we've learned is that it's called commingling, and that there are multiple options for how that could work, and even start just with like the dispatching process into securing a ride.
Murphy?
Yeah, I'd really like to thank you for a really comprehensive assessment. I think it was very thorough. My questions were two parts. Regarding the lost ridership, and I'm sure you don't have necessarily the answers right now, but I'd definitely be interested in hearing how we get those lost riders back. The second aspect would be the discussion of a circulator bus to maybe some of the outlying areas of the community. I was wondering what the thought process was behind that briefly.
Sure, by not retaining the circulator.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great questions. So related to kind of reattracting and re-engaging that ridership, I think there is some acknowledgement that some trips just kind of went away in COVID. Like people were more efficient in some of the trips that they were taking, or taking trips less often. So I do think there is some just kind of attrition that happens in that way because of the pandemic. I think there are some who then kind of informally reverted to relying on their neighbors or their cousins, or kind of their informal social network to make those trips, potentially because those people were kind of in their sphere and their bubble and felt safer than taking a public transportation option. So I think there's probably a really dynamic list of reasons as to why ridership has not returned. Certainly for us, our observation is that there's a lot more in terms of education and marketing that can be done, both within that pool of riders who are currently registered with BATS and also within the greater community. So some level of education, some sort of promotional information, and some sort of marketing in support of just the current service today, in addition to any kind of future service, would be paramount to spreading the word. There are also ways that you can pilot certain things. So the town could consider, and this is kind of where we're headed, is to say, hey, is it worth going fare free for a year? Is the cost of that something we would like to evaluate, because the advantage of the community knowing and having used the service and feeling safe in doing so and seeing how quick it is and things like that, is that worth, that experience then worth spreading the word? So I think there'd be some key ways and some creative ways to think about how to go about improving or increasing that education and those marketing efforts. So I think that's really one thing to consider moving forward. And then related to the circulator, so the biggest limitation of a circulator is that it typically is on a fixed route. And what we've seen in, like I said, most notably probably in the last 5 to 10 years, as smartphone technology and algorithms, and I'm not a software developer, but in working with a lot of people who are, transit software developers, and learning that there is just so much flexibility that real-time technology can provide now, that microtransit can actually better meet the needs, because you could get picked up, say, right out at the corner, in your neighborhood. Sometimes microtransit can be within a 1 or 2 block radius and require a short walk on the front end or the back end. But say, you walk to the end of your street and you pick up the bus, and then it's able to take you to a community destination. Maybe that's downtown, maybe that's the recreation center or a park. And so the flexibility that microtransit offers, I think now kind of supersedes the role of a circulator, in that you could always go to a destination on what would likely be a circulated route. You would just have the flexibility to do so at any time, and from any starting destination, is kind of how we're seeing that flexibility doesn't preclude accessing destinations on a circulator, but gives you more flexibility.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the answer.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Other questions? I had a couple. Trustee Sorcelli asked the first one, so I'm glad that we, after Mayor Pro Tem Grace and I met with you, it sounds like you did reach out to Raft, and they were pretty supportive. Okay. Yeah, and I would just stress too that I'd be completely in favor of trying to do free, no fares, and these, if not just for a time, to see if and how much that increases ridership. And with Trustee Stevens' comment, I totally agree. Integrating with Flex, like you guys said, would be fantastic. If at all possible, to get on a 287 so we could do the Flex Express. So we get our citizens directly to Boulder, would be fantastic. But if not, the regular Flex is awesome. And this is exciting. And I remember when we first started this out, I think it was on the last board, we were kind of looking at who could we use, and I think staff picked the right group. It's been great to work with you, and it's been clear going through this process, you know exactly what you're talking about. So I'm excited to see where this goes.
Great. I appreciate that feedback. Yeah, I feel like, man, things are changing so just as quickly as other industries are changing because of technology. Transportation and transit is as well. So it's been a really just exciting and fun process to really just envision what transit could look like, and what new technologies could really bring to the community. So we've really enjoyed it. And like I said, we do intend to come back with you with more defined information on that recommended service scenario, but we've got very clear direction on where we're headed with that. So we will be back, and I'll be excited to be with you all in person.
Thank you very much. Okay. Our next agenda item is the planning commission appointment, and this is for the vacancies caused by our two new trustees. And on the planning commission, I am blanking out here on who we had on the interview panel. What is it?
Would be me and trustee Sorcelli.
Okay, trustee Murphy and trustee Sorcelli, would either of you like to introduce this?
Yes.
Don't look at me, I'm just in the middle.
I guess it's your first time too. Who else was in the the interview committee?
It was us and Jan Dowker and then a couple of staff members. So
Okay, cool.
I can attempt to introduce it. I don't know
Yeah, go ahead.
what that entails, but we had 5 applicants, is that correct?
4.
4 applicants for 2 open positions. Only 3 of them ended up attending those interviews. They were all really highly qualified, just they had amazing resumes and interest in serving. It was definitely a tough decision to pick between the 3, so we had a good discussion between myself and Trustee Murphy, correct? I'm remembering all the other trustees too. And then with Dowker, and she's the chair of the committee, correct? So it was a good conversation.
Awesome, okay. Do you guys have any recommendations?
I can make the motion if you want. I'll make the motion to appoint Melissa Feldbush and John Van Bentham to the planning commission for a term of 3 years.
Okay, John Van, okay.
If it was emotions, I guess.
Yeah, right. I was just trying to get the names down. Okay, is there a second on that?
I'll second it.
Okay, trustee Murphy has moved, trustee Hardy has seconded. Any final discussion on that? Clerk, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Grace,
Yes.
trustee Sorcelli,
Yes.
trustee Ayers,
Yes.
trustee Stevens,
Yes.
trustee Murphy,
Yes.
trustee Hardy,
Yes.
Mayor Karsbeck.
Yes. Okay, thank you. And thank you everyone who applied. All right, our second to last agenda item here will be the oil and gas administrative suspension extension. So we're just extending our current moratorium that we've had since 2019. I'll shut up there and turn it over to Administrator Kirk.
That's pretty much the summary. As you know, after the adoption of SB 19-181, that gave local municipalities and local governments the ability to more fully regulate oil and gas development within their jurisdictions. The town board placed an administrative suspension in place, both to monitor the policymaking process in other communities around us. And at the state level, as you know, the COGCC went through a very large rulemaking process, just finished up late last year. The Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, sorry not to use acronyms that not everybody knows. And so we watched that process. We've now seen a couple of new codes adopted in other communities around us, Larimer County, Boulder County, and a few others, Broomfield. So we have some things to work from. We have reached out to and interviewed a couple of attorneys who specialize in oil and gas regulation, and Trustee Hardy and Attorney Smith and I interviewed those two. We will be recommending to you, excuse me, that we work with former Senator Mike Foote, who's also an attorney. He was the prime sponsor of SB 19-181, so he obviously has, while he was in the legislature, has a very good handle on what the original intent of that law was and how he thinks it could be best implemented and can help us through that policy-making process. So our goal is to do that through this next 6-month continuation of the administrative suspension. Our hope is that that would be the last time, because we'd have new regulations in front of you and adopted hopefully before that expires, but that's our target. And so we would suggest tonight that you continue that suspension for 6 more months with the goal of completing regulations before it expires.
Any questions?
Are there any pending applications at this point?
There are not. We have met with, we don't have any formal applications. I don't want to be misleading. We have met with an oil and gas company that's interested in adding to one of their existing well sites and developing another surface lease that they have in the town limits. As you know, there's only a handful of properties in the town limits that can even qualify for oil and gas development. They're all out on the east end of town, out by the freeway, but they haven't applied for anything. And they're aware that we're still under this process and understand that we're going through it. And I assume they'll be wanting to work with us as we go through that policy-making process as well.
Great. I have no questions. Anyone else? Okay.
I'll make the motion.
What's that? Yeah, go ahead.
I move to approve resolution 2022-4, a resolution of the town board and town of Berthoud extending the temporary administrative suspension of consideration of oil and gas permit applications.
Second.
Trustee Hardy has moved on this extension, excuse me. Trustee Stevens has seconded. Any final discussion from the board? Clerk, may roll call vote, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Grace,
Yes.
Trustee Hardy,
Yes.
Trustee Ayers,
Yes.
Trustee Murphy,
Yes.
Trustee Saraceli,
No.
Trustee Stevens,
Yes.
Mayor Karspeck.
Yes. All right. And thank you, Trustee Hardy, for being on that interview committee and all the work staff's done to get that. Okay, well, now we're on. That was quick. We're on to our last agenda item here, and that's the Newell Farm purchase. Is that-
Do I need to recuse myself, or can I abstain from voting? How would that proceed?
So I'll give a brief introduction and then you can decide
Okay.
if that's okay with you. So we, as you saw in your packet, we've been working on a contract for purchase and sale. I think we've agreed generally to terms on price, assuming the board agrees with that. But there's a whole lot of details involved with this purchase, as you know, in the ability to restrict its use in the long term to parks and recreation or farming activity. We had documents prepared that we included in your packet. We received some revised documents from the sellers yesterday. Their attorneys changed some format and reorganized the documentation in such a way that we're not comfortable recommending that you approve that tonight. We think we can work through that pretty quickly with them and get it back in front of you at your next meeting. But we would recommend tonight that you simply postpone this till the next meeting.
Sounds fair to me. I think getting a document on Monday and having us vote on Tuesdays kind of difficult. You need
That
to
would be
do
tough. I don't think they expected us to, and they were very gracious about it when they sent it over, knowing that it constituted a fairly significant change. I don't know substantially in terms of the deal, but just in the way that the documents are structured and making sure that we have the time to go through that appropriately. They're protecting themselves, we're protecting ourselves, just like everyone should in a transaction. And I feel confident we'll get through it and have something ready for you to look at and hopefully approve at the next meeting.
Okay. I don't think that needs a motion or anything. We'll just not take action tonight.
Unless you guys just are dead set on doing it tonight.
We're good. Okay, we'll postpone on that one. Well, that was quick. That concludes our regular meeting here. So we'll just go right off on the reports. And we can start off, let's start off with, one says staff, the other says the board. So we'll start off with the board. We'll start with Trustee Stevens.
Sure you want to start with me?
I do.
Okay. All right, I only have one thing to report, and I'm just gonna read it out loud and just, we'll go from there. I'll try to make this short but sweet, you know, I'm always make everything short, right? Okay. When I say sweet, I mean it. This 2+ years on the board have been a pleasure. That is why my decision to resign was very difficult. I didn't think this was going to be this tough, but it is. I apologize. I look back and reflect on the things we as a team have accomplished despite all the challenges. In fact, those challenges didn't break us. They made us stronger and more effective. When I reference the team, I am referencing Mayor Karspeck, current and past trustees, the entire staff, Administrator Kirk, as well as Attorney Smith, and I have to mention Clerk Samora, all of whom mentored and guided me on this journey. And let's not forget the citizens. That's why they are why we do this job. And to them, thank you for trusting me to represent you. It's been a privilege and an honor. When I was elected, I had two main goals. One was to learn and understand this whole governmental process thing better. I didn't feel it was right to pass judgment or criticize elected officials until I put myself in their shoes. And boy, did I learn. This has been an eye-opening experience, to say the least. and I now know that judgment shouldn't even have been part of the equation. 2, I wanted to help Berthoud become better along the way. I wasn't sure exactly what that was going to look like. However, I did my best, and will leave it to everyone else to decide if I accomplished that goal. Now, for family and personal reasons, we sold our home in Berthoud and are moving west of Longmont, which means I will no longer be a citizen of this great town and can no longer serve as trustee. I do, however, still work, play, shop, a lot of things here, and plan on staying involved. So effective at the end of this meeting, I will resign my position as Berthoud trustee. And again, thank you everyone for making this an extremely positive experience and more than I could ever have hoped for.
Thank you, Lonnie. I just want to say thank you. I'll just speak for myself here, but I think the extraordinary circumstances of the pandemic and working with you, you've been a real voice of reason to me. And though you say I mentored you, you did a lot of mentoring for me as well. And I think in just the 2 years you've been here, you've accomplished a lot, from representing folks on the east end of town with the pump station. And
yeah, we got the pump station done.
To getting some important tree lawn distancing in, and working on the fireworks show and getting those out there. And I'll just tell the folks in the audience, I was introduced to Lonnie as an angry citizen who was opposed to some development on the east side of town.
I got kicked out.
And Lonnie got kicked out of the meeting. So to have you on the board here, it's been a surprise and a real pleasure that you ran and did this. So thank you very much. Best of luck.
Thank you.
I wish I had a fanny pack though.
When I get a new one, I'll let you have this one.
Town of Berthoud fanny pack.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna, we'll talk about how proceed with that vacancy here, but let's go through the rest of the board reports here. So was that it for you, Lonnie?
I'm done.
All right, Trustee Soricelli?
The only thing I wanted to bring up as something to think about is one of the citizens actually brought it up tonight, was I've been in contact with a couple of the Loveland City Council members, and they've expressed concern that with their ordinances they're passing with the encampments in town, that we're gonna have an issue in Berthoud, and that if we don't get ahead of it, we might be dealing with it after it's already here. And so I just want, that's something we haven't had to deal with before, and so I want that on our radar, and just to kind of know what staff, how we are looking at that issue, and if we do think it could be something that comes to Berthoud, and how we can handle it with the resources we have.
Do you want to field something right now on that, or?
I'll just briefly say, you might not believe us, but we actually were talking about this before Loveland decided to adopt their camping ban, mostly because we'd seen kind of the explosion of camping in the open space areas, much like I'm sure everyone else has on the south end of Loveland, and what's driven their policy discussion. So we were talking about it a few weeks ago, and then Loveland announced they were gonna consider this emergency ban. We have looked at some language we have in our code to see if it's sufficient for enforcement, and assuming that it's not, we'll be bringing something to you in the next couple of meetings to consider.
I think it would be beneficial if we were synced up with what they were doing, so that it was congruous. Thank you.
Theirs is already in effect though, isn't it?
Did they put it in effect in their last meeting? I wasn't following.
But ours is coming up in June, you think? I'm just worried about getting in there as quickly as possible.
I think there's two things. One, yes, we want to be quick about it. We also want to make sure that it's enforceable and legal and appropriate. Two, I think, we don't have services here really in the same way that they do in Loveland, and so part of the reason why so many folks have chosen to locate there is because there's quick and easy access to some of those services that they rely on. And so it's not to say that we might not see an increase in homelessness around town. I don't think it will be significant. It'll give us some time to adjust, but our hope is to bring something to you next month.
Trustee Hardy, you brought that up too, I know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I brought it up in an email to see if we could get it on an agenda item or special study session item. So that it's kind of good that we keep that on track as well. Berthoud Main Street's the other board that I sit with that Lia's on to, me and Vol are on that. We're looking for some few good people for our board there too, after we just filled a couple planning commission seats. So if there's anybody interested in downtown stuff business, come join us down there or get in contact with myself or Berthoud Main Street. Berthoud Main Street has acquired use of the BATS bus to kind of do a circular loop to get people from downtown out to Berthoud Day at the rec center and then back downtown. We'll see how that goes. If we get the ridership, we'll keep it going. And then, let's see, anything else? I don't think I'm forgetting anything. I think that's it. Oh, historical preservation. We did, I don't know if you've noticed anything, but follow that at all. But we did appoint one house as of extraordinary value, and they have a nice little yard sign on their front yard. It's on 6th Street, 646th Street. And then we just are going to be working on naming an extraordinary, not business, but the building the business is in, the structure. We'll be finalizing that here soon too. And they'll get a little window decal that shows that they've been singled out as an extraordinary historic building structure downtown. So those are just some things going on. And that is all.
Cool. To follow up on the Berthoud Main Street, just for folks that don't know, there's several open seats now. A couple had to leave out of state. So there's several open positions, and there's a slight tie to the town. When this was set up by a philanthropist, the town, I think we kicked in a little, but we also have an automatic seat on the board, which Tim or I fill in on, and Tim's much more active than I am. But Berthoud Main Street is what puts on Snowfest now. So anyone either, I guess, on the board, probably better someone in the community. If you know anyone, welcome to apply. Trustee Ayers.
Nothing for me.
Okay. Trustee Murphy.
Yeah, I've got a few things. I had a wonderful meeting with the Tree Advisory Committee. They introduced themselves. They've got a lot of work they want to get done in the coming weeks and months. Their biggest action that they wanted to attempt was do some social media outreach and educational initiatives. So I tasked them with compiling kind of a list of what they'd like to actually do with the town and how we can actually go about that. And that might be something for you, Administrator Kirk. They'd like to start an Instagram account, and they weren't sure how to manage that properly. And that's something we can certainly talk about in future meetings, but they really want to get moving. They feel like they have the material to provide to the citizens. They just are not sure how to convey that. So, otherwise, Arbor Day went well, and we've got positions on the Tree Advisory Committee. I believe the application process should be closing tomorrow, correct? But we'll be doing interviews shortly to fill those vacancies and hopefully have them at full strength.
Awesome.
That's all I've got.
Thank you.
I actually have a question. Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Did you guys talk at all about the fire ban of was it Juniper?
We did not talk about that. I'm sure it'll come up. It's on my radar for sure. So
I don't think junipers are listed as one of the approved trees in town anyway.
I think I have it.
Or was it Russian olive? Russian olive, I was taken off one time.
But the junipers, because it's flammable, so.
Yeah, super.
Maybe that with the tree committee too, I'm thinking, because I know for the sports fest, they came in, youth advisor came in front of the board to present. Maybe if we're for the board that we'd have the tree committee come and present those ideas to us.
we could certainly do that.
I don't know if that works for staff too.
That's a good idea.
Okay. We got a lot coming up in June. Maybe we could do it in July or something. But I know they've been wanting to do something for a while.
Mhm.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Yep.
Did
Yep.
Okay.
That's it.
Mayor Pro Tem?
So a couple things, Youth Advisory Committee, the grind towards Summer Scorch Fest is still moving on, just great and fun and dandy. I was asked by them to come to the board and I guess the rest of the audience. They're looking for some volunteers to help out with the 29th and 30th of July. It's 2 different shifts. It's that Friday the 29th, it's in the afternoon, and then that Saturday, it's in the, like pretty much from like noon till about 5 or 6. If you would like to be in contact to be a possible volunteer, essentially as a supervisor, they'll have rides, wandering around. You can see me after the meeting. I can take down your email address and we'll be in touch with you guys from there. But yeah, they're rocking and rolling on it. They've got some food trucks lined up. They've been working with the rec center and Amanda at the rec center. They're making it look easy, even though they're freaking out.
This is the 29th and 30th?
July 29th and
That's
30th.
the festival too?
That is the Summer Scorch Fest. That will
Alright.
be at the rec center.
We have an audience, maybe could we describe
Yeah.
it real quick?
Oh,
What the Scorch Fest is?
So the Scorch Fest, so a little bit rewind. Birth Youth Advisory is putting this on. They're essentially the age group that's just outside of elementary school, but just into high school, about to leave high school. That age group where it's kind of a struggle to get them engaged here because you have parks and then a bunch of nothing, and then when you're an adult you can go eat and stuff. So their job is to kind of go and engage their peer group to help guide the town and engage that group of people for volunteer work, for community involvement, kind of see how the town works. And they came to the last board and asked for essentially a budget item to put on Summer Scorch Fest, which essentially is going to be a big carnival. The entire thing's been planned. They've got different vendors showing up, food trucks, a carnival provider. They've got rides that'll be showing up. A whole bunch of different groups will be there to hang out, talk, ride on rides. If the requirements to be on the council are 13 to 17, 13 and then 17 and some change. When you turn 18, you're no longer in it. But you get a lot of volunteer hours. I think that's something that Spartans need to graduate. So yeah, if anybody wants to apply there, I can take your information. If you also want to apply to be a volunteer, anybody on the board or anybody in the audience, just see me after the meeting. I can just take down your email address and we'll be in touch with you from there. You'd essentially be walking around, taking tickets, making sure everybody's okay. It's going to be in the late July heat, so be prepared for that, but it's going to be a blast. And
Awesome.
The only
I'm
other thing
excited
is
about this.
there's a street light on my street that buzzes real bad. Is that normal? And if not, can we get it replaced?
So the only streetlights that the town owns and operates are the green ones on Mountain Avenue in downtown. So all the other poles would either be Poudre Valley Rural Electric Association or Excel, depending where you live in town. And I honestly don't know which service providers I never know off the top of my head.
I'm in the Hillsdale area.
I believe that's Excel. So we can confirm. We can help submit
If it's
that.
Poudre Valley, you get the Excel. Well,
We can help submit that. They have a website where there's a poll number on the pole, and you go to their website for streetlight issues, punch in the poll number, and they'll dispatch a technician sometimes. But yeah, I think you're Excel.
Okay.
I'll confirm. We'll let you know for sure.
Okay. Well, I'll call up Excel tomorrow and I'll stay on hold for a couple days just to make sure I'm in line.
Let's go look at the tag, see if it says Excel.
Or that, yeah.
Well, that would simplify life, yeah.
We can't have that, but that's it.
all right, cool.
Saw it down, they'll be out in a minute.
What'd you say?
Saw it down, they'll be out in a minute.
Now that Lonnie's resigned,
Yeah, right.
I can say anything I want to. Oh, yeah, what are you
Yeah,
talking
she-
about?
Yeah, sounds like you know. I had a pretty light week. I just want to first thank staff for meeting today with folks about the bike park. There's always some friction there, but I think it was nice that we could all sit down, kind of a little less stress in a meeting and go over some of those concerns. Ginger Tomasi with House and Neighborly Service brought up that they are running just about out of funds to help out with our utility shutoffs. And the town does give them flyers, so when people are about to have their utility shut off, we kind of give them flyers to reach out to them, and they're running out of money. So she's asking to see if they could get some money. I don't think we gave them money in the first place. I think there was a grant. I was trying to recall with her, and she said there might have been a grant to get money to them.
I think I'll reach out to Ginger. She and I have a good relationship. I haven't talked to her about this yet, but we'll work something out.
Well, I told her that Trustee Sorcelli brought this up, and Attorney Smith, you had some experience maybe looking at a utility bill that we could
Attorney Smith did send us some information about a program called LEAP.
LEAP, okay. So,
It's like a
energy
assistance program, but I think it's probably different than what we're talking about
Well,
here.
that's where I asked if they could put like a tip line on our bill, so you can say, I wanna round up my bill or pay an extra $5, just as those that need.
A lot of them sounds really similar, it's something on their bill. Okay,
That's
well,
an interesting idea.
I think that makes
I'll
a lot
talk to Ginger
Okay.
and see what we figure out.
Finally, yeah, about the vacancy process here. Clerk, I'm kind of putting you on the spot. I don't know, do you have handy the wording from the statute? Or could you mind summarizing what the statute says for appointing?
Certainly, so with any vacancies that occur on the board, the governing body, which is the town board, would need to take action within 60 days to fill that vacancy. And that would be action by making an appointment to fill that vacancy or by calling an election to fill that vacancy. If no action is taken to fill that vacancy within 60 days, then the board would be obligated to then schedule a special election to fill that vacancy. This particular vacancy would be for a partial term that would still end at the same time that Trustee Stevens' term ends in 2024.
Okay. I'm wondering if the board, so our next meeting would be the 14th. Is that correct? Next regular meeting?
Next regular meeting is the 14th.
And I'm wondering if the board would support just having this conversation on how to proceed on the 14th. Not how to do it, but just to have that conversation about on the 14th.
Yes.
I'm good with it.
Is there a reason we don't want to have the conversation tonight?
Because it's not listed, I think it'd be important to have that noticed. That's my only thought, and why not?
I think that makes sense too.
Yeah. And I didn't really have anything else. I had a pretty light week, so that's it. Thank you. I'll turn it over to staff.
Couple quick things for me. The Port Committee will be doing a tour of our parks and recreation facilities and some of the lands that we own that haven't been developed yet. They'll be doing that on June 1st, so next Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. The town board is invited to attend. And if you'd like to go, just let us know and coordinate. If we have more than 2 of you there, we need to notice it as a meeting, so I'd like to know ahead of time if you plan to join. But if you haven't seen those facilities yet, especially some of the ones that we own that we haven't developed, Richardson's a good example, Knievel, the Jaskowski property that we own, but that we're still struggling with what to do with. Some of those, it might be good to put eyes on those and get a good handle on what those look like. In that same vein, we had hoped to do a tour with you as part of a retreat. And because of Lonnie now, we have to postpone the,
I'll go.
Just teasing, yeah. But we will hold off on doing a retreat until the board makes a decision about how to proceed. Would like to have a full board when we do that, so.
Makes sense.
There is a regional elected officials meeting that's put on usually twice a year. During the pandemic, that obviously slowed down. There was one held up by Horsetooth Reservoir. I think Mayor Karspek, did you attend that one? Yeah. Maybe a couple others. We hosted once here at TPC. Actually during the pandemic, when restrictions were loosened enough, we could get everybody in and have them spaced out. But it's just a good chance to, there's usually a short program and a chance to network with other elected officials in the region. The city of Fort Collins is hosting this time. And it's coming up in about a month. So we sent you an email about that. If you haven't responded back and you are interested in attending, let me know. A couple of you did, so thank you. We've RSVP'd for you, but just wanted to remind you of that. Let's see. We do plan to have a study session on June 7th. We talked about that before. June 7th is not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after. Next Tuesday is a 5th Tuesday, so you still get a break. But on June 7th, we'd like to discuss our draft policy for metro districts and get your feedback on that, and then also present to you some really high level decisions that we'd like to discuss. You won't make a decision, but you'll give us some direction, hopefully, on the 3rd Street redevelopment project. As you'll recall, the Mountain Avenue Overlay Plan envisioned some fairly significant redevelopment opportunities along Third Street and Massachusetts, and in conjunction with Old Town Hall and that redevelopment. We'd like to start doing some of the initial design work there to make sure all of that works well together. And so there's some kind of bigger picture decisions about parking and those types of things that we'd like to get your feedback on before we move too far down the road. So we'd like to do both of those on the 7th possibly. And possibly Newell Farm, if by chance it was done, we could host a special meeting. But we're targeting June 14th and we'll do 7th if we're able. So just a reminder, June 7th, study session, normal time here at Town Hall. I will be out next week on a family vacation, so just if you're looking for me, I'll be around, but won't be as accessible, so if you need something, feel free to reach out to Jeremy Ollinger, our Deputy Town Administrator. He'll be happy to do whatever you need. We've got a very long list of major policies, projects, initiatives that we'll be working through over the next few months. I'm working with Mayor Karspek and Mayor Pro Tem Grace on that list and how to schedule. We're just gonna try to set the priorities and work on those one at a time until we get through it. So some of those we can do at regular meetings, some of those will warrant study sessions. So we're trying to come up with a good schedule for how to work through those.
I was gonna bring up, we were talking about maybe doing some of our study sessions remote, just to make it easier. The board's okay with that. Or that way, some of you guys got kids, you don't have to leave there as long.
Yep, and we would try to keep each study session focused to one item, maybe two if one of those is a short. You know, the Third Street one I think is probably a 20-minute discussion. It's just some decisions about parking and there's some opportunities to change things to one-way or two-way in certain spots, and is that worth it? Some of those kinds of discussions should be brief, but typically we'll just try to focus those on one item so we have the time to dig in and go through and get direction from you as appropriate.
I know we were talking, did we want to try that where we came in an hour early just as the study session? Is that an option we're going to try as well, or is that a later?
So I did mention to Mayor Karspek and Mayor Pro Tem Grace that maybe there's an opportunity to do 5:30 study sessions, 5:30 p.m. on regular Tuesdays. Some of those might be a challenge for you guys to get here after a normal work day or whatever. But if those are opportunities, we can do that as well, and that certainly could be an efficient way to do it. 5:30 to 6:30 study session, then regular board meeting at 6:30, like we normally would. So we can kind of keep that as an option, and we can talk about that more as we've had some time to consider about whether or not that works for each of the trustees.
And for the new people, yeah, you don't have to think on the spot. Feel free to email Administrator Kirk your thoughts later on if you have any thoughts on that.
Absolutely. And then I'll just mention, because Trustee Sorcelli did not, and I know why, but Birthday Day is coming up on June 4th. That's before our next board meeting, so just a reminder to join the Chamber of Commerce and all the work that they put into putting on a Birthday Day. It should be a great event. Our staff is supporting the Chamber and trying to help them get ready. And it's a big, you know, the Chamber's moving Birthday Day to Wagner Farm Park, and so this will be kind of a first test run to see how that works, and I'm sure it'll be a fantastic event. And just encourage everybody to come and enjoy the day. So.
Well, and I want to take a moment to thank staff because it's not easy doing something this big and this new, and so thank you for being patient. And you know, it's definitely been a team effort. So I'm really grateful.
We put a lot of work in, and one thing to thank staff about too is Steve Hensley. Last minute, I was kind of tasked, made a little overloaded with helping out the Historical Society find a place to play their historic baseball in the new location, and Steve was very helpful last minute finding a location for them. So that's great. So thank you guys for that. And I think we have someone in the crowd that will be that want to do some judging for pancake eating contest. So I'll be there to help judge that. So that's fantastic.
I did hear there's a celebrity dunk tank too.
Yeah.
So bring your dollar bills and enjoy dunking Sergeant Anderson into the dunk tank. So
I feel like I should do a quick commercial for some of the things going on.
I think
so
you should.
Okay.
I think you should. I think it's okay.
All right. So there will be a dunk tank, and someone in the back room will be getting dunked, and a feisty cafe manager as well will be involved in that. And then we're gonna have a big band playing, Don Elwood's Big Band, and Chris Daniels, who's been a headliner for a lot of Lovelands events, will be there as well. And then we will have Berthoud's talent show, And that's gonna be a conglomerate of people who have been working with Butch and already, Butch Haas, who does Newell Farm concerts. He's right now auditioning kids and adults for the talent show, so we're gonna have that. And then we've also found a really talented kid who lives in Windsor who's gonna be DJing the last 2 hours of the event, and he's kind of a prodigy, so I wanna take credit for discovering him, but I can't, because he's already discovered. But we also, thanks to New Freedom, Aaron in the back is helping put on an old-fashioned pie eating contest. So.
What flavor? This is important.
I don't think we know. I think it's gonna be all kinds of flavors, right?
Yeah.
So there's gonna be an old-fashioned pie eating contest to make it feel like original Bertha days. And then we're gonna have a kid zone, and we've already registered about 50 traditional vendors for the lawn area. And then about 15 food trucks have signed up to come in. So it's gonna be big, and the parade is gonna be big too, so.
If you're
should-
bored on Saturday, it's your own fault.
If I'm dead on Saturday, because I just left. But we're very excited, so we're gonna be happy to see everybody there
Day of rest on Sunday.
in the next 2 weeks after that, hopefully.
The month of rest afterwards.
And thank you again to staff, because staff's been so gracious with figuring all that out, so thank you.
I'm just glad to see Bertha Day back.
Nothing else from me.
Attorney Smith?
If I may, Your Honor, just briefly, thank you and a goodbye to Trustee Stevens. I will miss you. It's been a pleasure working with you. I will miss your humor and wit. And I will miss your pre and post meeting serenade of cowboy songs.
You can yodel too.
But I wish you the best in all that you have in store for your future.
Thank you.
Is there anything else
Pick up the slack for you, laugh for me.
before I adjourn the meeting? All right, hearing none, meeting adjourned.